Earlier, did we even cover that? Or no, Arlo? Earlier we mentioned that maximal strength is the maximum amount of force that we can neurologically produce during a contraction. This is the central nervous system. This contraction is determined by three things: the cross-sectional area, that we're talking about the size of the muscle, the fiber length, and the number of fibers within the muscle. The number of fibers is genetically determined. We cannot affect this. With training, however, the other variables we can. One of these variables is the number of filaments and thickness of myosin can be increased through maximum strength training. This increases the force of contraction. The best way I could put this is like a rowboat. The more oars that we have in the water, the more force we can produce. So strength training can increase the size, thickness, and number of those oars, essentially. So now that we know how to improve our force production, let's discuss what best methods, or more specifically exercises, can be used to facilitate this. The two best bang for your buck strength increasing lower body exercises are the squat, that's back squat, front squat. I like the back, and the deadlift. Yes,
I have a lot of
Andy?
questions, sorry.
No, dude, like I said, if you guys have questions, fire them off.
Are you just, I assume you're just talking about the difference between the bar here and the bar here?
Yep, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Both the squat and the deadlift replicate remarkably close the actions of the jump. So, and we're talking about volleyball for the most part here, jumping specifically. We all want to jump high. Yes, Chad?
Which one's better on the knees?
Which one is better on the knees?
Which one?
That's a great question. I would probably, because I have bad knees and bad back now, deadlift, much easier on my knees, harder on my back, unless I'm doing sumo, and squats are harder on my knees. Shane has had 97 microfracture surgeries on his knees. What do you think, buddy?
I would agree with deadlift for sure.
Yeah. If I were going to pick one exercise that I could have for pretty much the rest of my life, and that would do more for me than anything out there, it would be sprinting. But I can't sprint, so the next thing would be deadlifting, for sure. Sprinting's the best. So,
Think about power clean. Do you like power cleans?
I don't, and here's why. So this is presented later, but it goes back to specificity. And from everything that I've seen working, so I used to work for a company called Athletic Republic, kind of like a Parisi School Speed. And our Chief Science and Technology Officer did extensive study on power cleans, their specificity relating to like sport-specific movement. And my personal feelings that they don't replicate, especially in volleyball, very well. They don't translate very well. I would say if you're going to do power cleans, you're totally fine to do them. We're talking about the bulk of your training.
Okay.
This is what I mean. Yeah, let me differentiate between like throwing them in there once in a while and like that's your focus. If it's your focus, I would say an offensive lineman. I would definitely say a brakeman for bobsled, and I would say Olympic weightlifting for sure because that's your sport, and then CrossFit. But those are about it. I know they're still pretty common in track and field world. It's changing a little bit, again, because it's a bilateral movement, and sprinting is all unilateral. So, do you know who Franz Bosch is?
I don't know Franz. I don't know his last name.
Franz Bosch, he's in charge of the sprinters and jumpers, but he goes into great detail on specificity, and he has developed like special cleans, intention for single leg athletes. And those I really like. And then I think there's a huge risk to reward ratio with those. They're very complex. Most chiropractors will tell you that the compression that you get from a power clean, power snatch, they're just really damaging on your back. And so I look at my life and I go, I've got a crappy back. I don't want to hurt it anymore. You can pretty much overcome any peripheral injury, but I mean, I screwed up my back a year ago, and it's like I still have a hard time driving. And so I like looking at my own athletes. I just wouldn't prescribe it. There's just too many cons to pros. You can get the same, much better results. A lot of people use cleans for speed of hips. That's kind of the primary pop. And you can do that with bands and all sorts of stuff that I think are better. The problem is it's very cultural, right? Like, especially in the track and field world, you gotta do it football, big time, right? I think that will slowly get kind of rooted out for some stuff that actually applies a little bit better. Who knows?
Can I throw something in quick on that too?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm kind of with Brandon where I don't do cleans a lot, and a lot of times it also comes down to I think the risk to reward ratio is kind of skewed where it's not worth it for me, but also a lot of times I'm working with young athletes, with high school athletes, and I might have them for 8 weeks, and that's all the time I have, and I don't feel like I can teach them how to do a clean or a snatch effectively in 8 weeks and make any progress on it, where it's a lot quicker to teach a squat or a deadlift and to increase and progress from there. So that's kind of my view.
That's a really good point. So yeah, they're really, they're the most technical of lifts for sure. All right. Both the squat and the deadlift replicate remarkably close to actions of the jump. Each action is a triple chain or triple joint movement. So we're talking ankle, knee, and hip. So just like you would get in a jump, that's a triple joint action. Athletes can handle higher loads with these exercises, and higher loads equals greater strength increases. So yeah, I don't want to be jumping with a massive amount of weight. It's just too sketchy. So that's a big thing for me. That's just my own personal risk to reward ratio. Success, my personal belief is 99% outlasting the other guy. And you can't do that if you're not playing. So it's pretty easy. Once you get to number 1, it's fairly easy to maintain it, but if you're number 3 and you get injured, you're not getting to number 1 anytime soon. Let's talk briefly about the greater the load principle. Referring again to the Soviets, they use predominantly 70 to 85% of their 1RM for their training. We already talked about this, actually. It's just those higher loads, they went to failure all the time. Their joints took a smashing. So there is a correlation that shows higher load, the greater the risk. Let's see. All right, let's talk about if the higher the load equals greater strength increase, is it possible to use a load heavier than 1 RM? Does anybody know? Obviously, if you read the next word, you're like, yes, it is. It's called eccentric contraction or eccentric training. So, as your muscle, so does everybody know what concentric, isometric, eccentric is referring to? If you don't, it's cool. Logan? No. So, concentric action just means the shortening of the muscle. The eccentric action means the lengthening of the muscle. As the muscle gets longer, it can handle more force. So, Candace, we're going to use Candace here. We're just going to do come on, stand up. Just do a demonstration. So we're going to use her biceps, so you can just stick out your arm. And she's going to resist me pulling her arm down. So she can actually hold a fairly decent amount of force as her muscle lengthens. It gains greater tension and it can handle more force. However, if she starts here, curl, it's not going anywhere. So if you thought about it like in dumbbell terms, I got a 50, 60-pound dumbbell, I can't move that thing. But if I bring it up here, I can let it come down. So it's still handling that force, and that's what's important. So the muscle still handles that force. Early plyometrics in the 50s, the late 50s, they called it the shock method. Again, Soviet Unions, they're the ones that created it. What they would do is they would find a box that was 20% higher than their vertical, or what they were trying to achieve. And they would simply fall, land, and hold it. And that eccentric force that they had to handle, because it was higher than what they could produce, their body adapted to it, and then they could start producing it. And if you look at the Olympics back then, they smoked everybody with it. Anyway, so this eccentric type of training can dramatically increase your strength. So you can handle almost up to 200% eccentrically what you can do concentrically. Now, it's just really, really, really hard to do, because if you imagine, let's say we take a back squat. John's working with 335 pounds. We could easily put 500 pounds on there, but we already know he's not squatting that back up. So John would go down, done. You know, he could handle it. He would have to put it on like the the safety bars, take all the weights off, put it back up and do it. You can see how extremely long this takes. There are methods. One of my favorite methods, there's actually, well, let's first talk about the machine called the Agaton. So there's a guy named Agaton, he lived out in Sweden, and he created this squat rack that could do just that. It used these massive pistons and belts and everything, but he built it for a strong man way back in the day, Magnus Magnuson. Anybody remember that guy?
Oh, yeah.
Magnus is a beast. He could squat over 1,000 pounds. So what he would do is he custom made these 100-kilogram weights for him, and they would stack this thing up. And the Agaton is a brilliant machine. There's actually, I think, only 3. Do you guys know what the Center of Excellence is? Anybody? Center of Excellence, you should know where it is. Why did you say yeah? Come on. Anyway, it's up in Park City, but this machine will allow you to take a massive amount of weight, let you squat down with it, and the instant you go up, all that weight's gone.
That's cool.
So it's really, yeah, you can develop strength insane. They got some cool stuff up there, but none of you are allowed to do it. None of us are, because you can only be like an Olympic skier. That's it. But anyway, so the Agaton did this eccentric action, but it takes a little bit of creativity. And the best one that I found that I really like for increasing strength in this eccentric manner is if you get on a leg press machine. This is the only time I really use a leg press because again they don't really translate. You can overload, come down with one leg, and push it back up with 2. So you use a weight that your single leg can't handle, but you can push it back up with 2, and it's an awesome way to increase the strength of the muscle that way. However, again, we talked about super heavy loads. They're really damaging to the nervous system. They take a tremendous load on the nervous system, and you'll get DOMS, or delayed onset muscle soreness. So eccentrics, I wouldn't use them a ton. The max I would ever do it is maybe once or twice a week, 2 to 4 sets tops. If you're really well trained, 4 sets. If you haven't been doing it that long, I'd only use like 2 sets. I wouldn't go high repetitions with it. We're talking like 3 to 6, and I would only do it for a max of like 4 weeks. But you can really increase your strength fast, but it is pretty dangerous if you go too much, if you use too much volume. All right, next one. Anybody got any questions so far? Good? Sean, how you doing, man? You cold? You got a big, thick coat on? I'm sweating. All right. So in closing, so we're going to go downstairs and we're going to actually learn how to squat and everything. Hey, bud, you're killing me. All right, so these are the main take-home points. Strength is the quality that will improve all other qualities, and throughout this kind of presentation, almost everything goes back to strength. You're going to see that strength is invaluable. You don't have to be big to be strong. 70 to 100% of your 1RM, 70 or 75 is what you would want for increasing maximal strength, or up to about 180% if you're using eccentrics, but you're going to have to like really figure that out, get creative. Higher sets, lower reps are used for maximal strength training. The reason I put debatable, again, I go higher on my sets. I'll go 6 to 10 reps. Again, the Soviet Union, they would only do like 3 to 5. So I guess there's the give and take. I wanted to become athletic really, really, really fast, and I wasn't planning on being, you know, a weightlifter for 25 years. So that's kind of, I think, one of the reasons I went a little higher. And then squats and deadlifts are the best lifts. Questions? Sarah?
So if I can only lift like, I don't know about 1 RM, but if I'm like regularly squatting half my body weight, like how you're saying it can squat more, you're carrying less of your weight. So if I'm exhausted, it would kind of say like carrying more than your body weight. Does that make sense?
Not really.
Okay.
Sorry. We can talk about it again.